The Prada heels clicked against our bedroom's marble floor as I zipped my suitcase. 42 years old, and my husband of 15 years had just told me I was past my expiration date. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Where exactly do you think you're going? Donovan stood in the doorway, arms crossed, that smug expression I'd grown to despise plastered across his face. Milan, I said simply, not bothering to look at him. He laughed, that condescending bark that had become his trademark lately. Milan? For what? Another one of your sad little business trips? I folded another silk blouse, Brunello Cucinelli, though he wouldn't recognize the brand, and placed it carefully in my luggage. Something like that. Right. He walked further into the room, loosening the tie I'd bought him last Christmas. Let me guess. Another consulting project that mysteriously pays just enough to cover your shopping habits. If he only knew. Those shopping habits he loved to mock were actually strategic purchases from the very brands whose parent companies sat in my investment portfolio. Every Hermes scarf, every Bottega Veneta bag, every pair of Manolo Blahniks, all part of my research, my understanding of the luxury market that had made me one of the most successful venture capitalists in the fashion industry. But Donovan Pierce didn't know that. He didn't know anything about the real me. I'll be back Monday, I said, closing the suitcase. Monday? He scoffed. The charity gala is Saturday night. You know, the one my firm is sponsoring? The one where I need my wife beside me, looking presentable? Presentable. As if I were a handbag he needed to accessorize his outfit. Take Kendra, I said calmly, referring to his 28-year-old assistant, the one he thought I didn't know about, the one he'd been sleeping with for the past 6 months in hotel rooms I could trace through our credit card statements. His face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I have work in Milan, real work, and you'll be fine without me. I lifted my suitcase off the bed. You always are. Jesus, Lennox. He ran a hand through his hair, using my name like an accusation. When did you become so bitter? You used to be fun, young, exciting. Now you're just... This, a 42-year-old woman who apparently had outlived her usefulness. I looked at him then, really looked at him. Donovan Pierce, junior partner at Pearson Harlow Consulting, a man who thought his mid-tier business degree and family connections made him exceptional. A man who'd spent our entire marriage believing he'd married down when he chose me, the quiet girl from the state school who did freelance work from home. You're right, I said softly, playing the role I'd perfected over 15 years. I'm not that girl anymore. His expression softened slightly, probably mistaking my calm for capitulation. Look, when you get back, maybe we should talk. About us. About where this marriage is going. Maybe we should, I agreed, knowing exactly where it was going. Straight to divorce court, where his attorney would be shocked to discover that his housewife had a net worth that dwarfed his by a factor of 50. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that once felt affectionate but now just felt patronizing, and left for his evening plans. Probably drinks with Kendra, probably at the hotel bar where he thought no one would recognize him. I waited until his Audi pulled out of the driveway. Then I made a call. Sutton, I said when my assistant answered. I'm ready. Initiate the Milan protocol. Confirmed, Sutton replied, her voice crisp and professional. Your jet leaves in 3 hours. The Gucci team is expecting you Friday morning. And Lennox? The announcement is scheduled for Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central European Time. I smiled, calculating the time difference. Saturday at 9 p.m. in Milan would be 2 p.m. in Chicago, right in the middle of Donovan's precious charity gala. Perfect. 15 years ago, I'd met Donovan Pierce at a coffee shop near Northwestern's campus. I was 27, fresh from closing my first major investment deal through my then-fledgling firm, Hartley Ventures. He was 30, charming, from a good family, and utterly convinced that his consulting job made him a master of the business universe. Our first date, he'd talked for 2 hours about his work, his ambitions, his 5-year plan. I'd listened, asked questions, and said very little about myself. When he asked what I did, I'd simply said, investment consulting, mostly freelance work. Pretty boring, really. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did consulting, for the companies I invested in, through the firm I'd built from scratch using money I'd earned working 80-hour weeks at Goldman Sachs before burning out and deciding to go independent. But I'd learned something important from my previous relationship, the one where I'd been open about my success, only to watch my then-boyfriend grow resentful, competitive, and eventually unfaithful with someone he felt was less intimidating. So with Donovan, I'd tried an experiment. What if I hid my success? What if I presented myself as ordinary, even underwhelming? Would that finally get me the genuine connection I craved? For a while, it seemed to work. Donovan was attentive, loving even. He proposed after a year, and I said yes, convincing myself that love was more important than honesty, that I could maintain my secret professional life while being his supportive wife. I'd been naive. The mask I wore, the underachieving housewife persona, became who he believed I was. And once he believed it, he began to resent even that. I wasn't accomplished enough to boost his status, but I also wasn't young enough or attractive enough to be a trophy. I was just there. A disappointment he'd settled for. Meanwhile, my boring freelance work had grown into Hartley Ventures, a venture capital firm specializing in luxury goods and high-end fashion. My portfolio included stakes in 23 companies across Europe and North America. My net worth had crossed 9 figures 2 years ago. And through it all, Donovan never suspected, never asked questions, never wondered how his wife could afford a closet full of designer clothes on freelance consulting income. Now, standing in our empty house, I felt something shift inside me. 15 years of hiding. 15 years of making myself smaller. 15 years of listening to his condescension, his criticisms, his increasingly blatant affairs. Enough. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. My private jet, leased through a shell company Donovan knew nothing about, departed Chicago at 11 p.m. I'd changed in the car, trading my modest home clothes for a cashmere travel set that cost more than Donovan's monthly salary. Sutton met me on the plane, her tablet already out, ready to brief me on the weekend ahead. Gucci is thrilled about the announcement, she said, pulling up a presentation. The partnership makes you their first independent venture capital partner. They're framing it as a commitment to backing innovative investors who understand luxury markets. I studied the press release she showed me. My photo, professional, confident, taken at our Milan office last month, dominated the top of the page. Lennox Hartley, founder and CEO of Hartley Ventures, brings 15 years of luxury market expertise and a portfolio valued at $1.2 billion. No mention of being someone's wife. No mention of being too old, too boring, too irrelevant. The announcement will be made at the Gucci Heritage Gala. Sutton continued. Milan's biggest fashion event of the season. Attendance is strictly limited to industry executives, major investors, and select press. And Donovan's gala in Chicago? Happens to be at exactly the same time. I've arranged for the press release to go out simultaneously in both cities. Chicago business media will pick it up within minutes. I imagine the scene. Donovan, in his rented tuxedo, playing the big man at his firm's charity event. His phone buzzing with notifications. His colleagues showing him the news on their phones. Did you know your wife is a venture capitalist? Your wife just partnered with Gucci? Your wife is worth over $1 billion? What about the other matter? I asked. Sutton's expression turned serious. The investigation is complete. Your attorney has documentation of 6 separate affairs over the past 4 years, including the current one with Kendra Walsh. We also have evidence of misappropriated marital funds, specifically the $47,000 he spent on jewelry for Ms. Walsh, charged to your joint credit card, my joint credit card, the one linked to my accounts, funded by my money, that he'd been using to buy gifts for his mistress. The divorce papers are ready, Sutton continued. They'll be served Monday morning, immediately upon your return. Given the evidence and Illinois law, your attorney expects a quick settlement heavily in your favor. No settlement, I said quietly. I want this to go to trial if necessary. I want every affair documented in public record. I want everyone who thought I was just his disappointing housewife to know exactly what he did. Sutton nodded. Understood. And Lennox? For what it's worth, watching you finally step into your full power, it's magnificent. Milan welcomed me with unseasonable sunshine and the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I'd spent Friday in meetings at Gucci's headquarters, discussing the partnership details, reviewing marketing strategies, and touring their design studios. Saturday morning, I met with my Milan-based investment team, reviewing our European portfolio and discussing 3 new opportunities in the luxury market. By lunch, I'd closed a $50 million deal to back an emerging Italian leather goods company. And through it all, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Fully myself. Not playing down my intelligence, not hiding my success, not pretending to be less than I was. At 4 p.m., my styling team arrived at my suite at the Principe di Savoia. They'd brought 3 gowns for me to choose from, each a custom Gucci creation. I selected the red one. Crimson silk that seemed to glow in the light, with a neckline that was elegant rather than revealing, and a silhouette that celebrated rather than apologized for my 42-year-old body. The back was open, showing skin Donovan had recently suggested I should cover up more. Bellissima, my stylist breathed, making the final adjustments. My hair was styled in a classic chignon that showed off diamond earrings, my own, purchased with my own money from my first major exit. My makeup was flawless, emphasizing rather than hiding the fine lines Donovan called aging poorly. I looked powerful, sophisticated, successful. I looked like myself. The Gucci Heritage Gala was held at Palazzo Clerici, an 18th-century palace that made Donovan's Chicago charity venue look like a hotel conference room. Frescoed ceilings soared overhead, crystal chandeliers glittered, and everywhere I looked, I saw the titans of the fashion industry. The red carpet stretched through the palazzo's entrance courtyard, lined with photographers from every major fashion publication in the world. Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, WWD, Elle, all waiting to capture the evening's arrivals. My car pulled up, the door opened, and I stepped into a storm of flashbulbs. Lennox! Lennox Hartley! Lennox? Who are you wearing? Ms. Hartley, can you tell us about the Gucci partnership? I moved down the carpet with the confidence of someone who'd done this dozens of times, because I had, just never where Donovan could see. I stopped for photographs, answered questions in fluent Italian, another skill he didn't know I had, and smiled for the cameras. Halfway down the carpet, my phone buzzed. A text from Sutton. Press release going live in Chicago in 3, 2, 1. I imagined Donovan at his gala, his phone suddenly exploding with notifications, his colleagues gathering around, showing him the news, his face draining of color as he realized the boring, aging housewife he'd been mocking was actually one of the most successful venture capitalists in the luxury sector. The thought made me smile wider for the cameras. Inside the palazzo, I was escorted to a private reception room where Gucci's CEO, Alessandro Benedetti, waited with several other executives. "Lennox," he said, kissing both my cheeks in the European fashion. "You look absolutely radiant. Are you ready for tonight's announcement?" "More than ready." "Excellent. We've arranged for a live stream of the announcement. It will broadcast to fashion industry websites worldwide, as well as to business news networks, including Chicago's Business News, where Donovan's colleagues would undoubtedly be watching." The gala began at 8 p.m. I sat at the head table, surrounded by fashion royalty, while a presentation showcased Gucci's latest innovations and partnerships. Then, at precisely 9 p.m. Central European Time, Alessandro took the stage. "And now, I'm thrilled to announce Gucci's newest strategic partnership," he said, his voice carrying through the Palazzo's grand ballroom. "Please join me in welcoming Lennox Hartley, founder and CEO of Hartley Ventures, as Gucci's first independent venture capital partner." The room erupted in applause. I stood, smoothing my red gown, and walked to the stage. The spotlight found me, and I saw heads turning, cameras flashing, people whispering as they recognized me from the red carpet. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and strong. "I'm honored to partner with a brand that understands that innovation in luxury comes from those who refuse to be limited by others' expectations, who refuse to diminish themselves to make others comfortable, who refuse to apologize for their success." More applause. I continued, speaking about Hartley Ventures' philosophy, about the future of luxury markets, about why Gucci and I were perfect partners. And in Chicago, 15 hours behind, Donovan would be watching his world implode. My phone didn't stop buzzing for the next 2 hours. Messages from colleagues congratulating me. Interview requests from Bloomberg, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Invitations to speak at industry conferences. And one message from Donovan: "Call me now." I deleted it and continued networking with fashion executives who actually valued my expertise. At midnight, after the gala ended, and I'd finished a round of private meetings with potential investors, I returned to my suite. Only then did I check my voicemail. 12 messages from Donovan, each more frantic than the last. "Lennox, what the hell is going on? Everyone here is showing me news about you and Gucci. Why didn't you tell me you owned a venture capital firm? People are asking me questions, and I don't know what to say. This is humiliating. Everyone thinks I didn't know about your career. They think I'm an idiot." The last message was quieter, almost vulnerable. "Lennox, please call me. We need to talk about this. About us. I may have been wrong about some things." I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, still in my red Gucci gown, and felt absolutely nothing for the man I'd been married to for 15 years. Instead, I called my attorney. "The divorce papers," I said. "Serve them tomorrow. Don't wait until Monday. I want him to get them while he's still processing tonight." "It's Sunday," my attorney said. "Most servers don't work Sundays." "Pay extra." I want him to spend his entire Sunday realizing exactly what he's lost. "Understood. Lennox, congratulations on the Gucci partnership. You've earned this moment." I hung up and walked to the window, looking out at Milan's glittering skyline. In this city, I was Lennox Hartley, venture capitalist, Gucci partner, powerful woman who'd built an empire through intelligence and determination. In Chicago, I'd been Lennox Pierce, disappointing housewife, too old, too boring, past my expiration date. No more. Sunday morning, I had brunch with 3 other female venture capitalists, discussing potential collaborations and European investment opportunities. My phone continued buzzing with messages from Donovan, each one increasingly desperate. "Lennox, please, we need to talk. I know I haven't been the best husband, but we can work through this. Everyone's asking why you hid this from me. What am I supposed to tell them?" I silenced my phone and ordered another cappuccino. At 2 p.m. Milan time, 8 a.m. in Chicago, my attorney texted, "Papers served." He was not pleased. I could imagine the scene. Donovan, probably hungover from drowning his humiliation in whiskey at the gala, answering his door to find a process server with divorce papers. Papers that detailed his affairs, his misuse of marital funds, and his soon-to-be ex-wife's request for a full forensic accounting of all assets. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Donovan's name flashed on the screen. For the first time all weekend, I answered. "Divorce?" His voice was raw, shocked. "Lennox, what the hell? You can't just—" "I can," I said calmly. "And I am. But no, we need to talk about this, face to face. When you get home?" "I'll be home Tuesday. My attorney will contact you about temporary arrangements. You'll need to move out of the house." "Move out? It's my house." "Actually," I said, "it's my house. Check the deed. It's been in my name since before we married." Silence. "Lennox, I don't understand any of this. You're a venture capitalist? Worth over $1 billion? Why didn't you tell me?" "I did tell you. I told you I did investment consulting. You simply assumed that meant I was unsuccessful because I didn't perform my success the way you needed me to." "That's not— I thought you were just doing small freelance projects." "Because you never asked for details, never showed interest in my work, never considered that I might actually be accomplished at something." Jesus, Lennox. Do you have any idea how humiliating last night was? Having everyone at the gala showing me articles about my own wife? Asking me questions I couldn't answer? I looked like a complete fool. "Yes," I said quietly. "You did. Now you know how I felt every time you introduced me as just my wife at your work events. Every time you implied I had no ambition. Every time you told me I was past my expiration date. I never meant—" "You did mean it. You meant every word. And that's why we're done. Lennox, please. Let's at least talk about this. I made mistakes, but the papers detail 6 affairs, Donovan. 6 separate women over 4 years, including $47,000 charged to my credit card for jewelry for Kendra. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." Another long silence. "If this is about Kendra, I can explain. I don't want your explanations. I want a divorce. My attorney will be in touch about dividing assets, though given that 97% of our marital wealth is mine, that conversation should be brief." "Wait, you can't just—" I hung up. Then I blocked his number, poured myself a glass of Barolo, and toasted my reflection in the mirror. To Lennox Hartley, I said softly, who finally stopped hiding. Monday morning, I had breakfast with Gucci's creative director, discussing a potential investment in sustainable fashion technologies. My phone was still silenced, still blocking Donovan's increasingly frantic attempts to reach me. Instead, I had messages from people who actually mattered. Industry colleagues congratulating me on the partnership. Former Goldman Sachs classmates saying they'd always known I'd do something extraordinary. An invitation to speak at TED Milan about women in venture capital. And one message from my mother, who'd been one of the few people who knew the truth about my career. Proud of you, sweetheart. He never deserved you anyway. I spent the rest of Monday in meetings, finalizing details of the Gucci partnership and exploring 3 new investment opportunities. By evening, I'd grown a portfolio by another $30 million and secured a seat on the board of an emerging sustainable luxury brand. Tuesday morning, I flew home to Chicago. Not to the house I'd shared with Donovan, but to the penthouse condo I'd purchased last year through an LLC, preparing for this exact moment. The condo had been my secret retreat, the place where I could be fully myself without maintaining the housewife charade. It had a home office worthy of a CEO, a walk-in closet, full of designer clothes Donovan had never seen, and windows overlooking Lake Michigan. It felt like freedom. Wednesday afternoon, I had my first official meeting with Donovan and our respective attorneys. We met at my attorney's office, a corner suite in one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms, paid for with my money. Donovan looked terrible. His hair was unkempt, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He stared at me as I entered the conference room, like he was seeing a stranger. In my Armani suit and Louboutin heels, I probably was a stranger to him. "Lennox?" he said, his voice hoarse. "Please. Can we talk privately? Just for 5 minutes?" "Anything you want to say can be said in front of our attorneys." He glanced at his lawyer, a mediocre divorce attorney he'd probably found through a Google search, then back at me. "I don't understand why you're doing this. We can work through our problems. Go to counseling. Start fresh." "I don't want to start fresh with you, Donovan. I want to start fresh without you." "But I love you." "No," I said calmly, taking my seat at the conference table. "You love the idea of being married to a successful woman, now that you know I'm successful. When you thought I was ordinary, you were happy to cheat on me with 6 different women and tell me I was past my expiration date." His attorney cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could discuss the asset division?" My attorney, one of Chicago's top divorce lawyers, slid a folder across the table. "Mrs. Pierce is requesting a divorce on grounds of adultery, with evidence of 6 separate affairs. She's also filing suit for the return of $47,000 in marital funds misappropriated for the purchase of jewelry for Mr. Pierce's mistress." Donovan's face flushed. I can pay that back." "With what money?" I asked. "According to our financial disclosure, 97% of our marital assets are mine. The house is mine. The investment accounts are mine. Even most of the furniture is mine, purchased with my income." "I earn good money," he protested. "You earn $180,000 per year. I earned $47 million last year alone. Would you like to guess what my net worth is now, Donovan?" He stared at me, speechless. $1.3 billion, I said. "That's with a B. I started Hartley Ventures with $500,000 15 years ago. While you were sleeping with your assistants and telling me I'd let myself go, I was building an empire." "Jesus," he whispered. "Under Illinois law," my attorney continued, Given that Mrs. Pierce's wealth was almost entirely acquired through her separate property and business activities, she's entitled to retain it. Mr. Pierce will receive a standard equitable distribution of the marital assets he directly contributed to, which we calculate at approximately $140,000. $140,000? Donovan looked like he might be sick. Out of $1.3 billion? Out of the $1.3 billion your soon-to-be ex-wife earned while you were criticizing her for not being young enough, or pretty enough, or interesting enough, my attorney said coldly. Yes. The meeting lasted another 90 minutes. Donovan tried to negotiate, tried to argue that he deserved more because he'd supported me during our marriage. My attorney calmly destroyed each argument with evidence of his affairs, his financial irresponsibility, and his well-documented contempt for the wife he was now claiming to have supported. In the end, he signed the papers. He had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming, and fighting would only cost him money he didn't have. As we left the conference room, he grabbed my arm. "Lennox, please. I know I screwed up, but doesn't 15 years of marriage mean anything to you?" I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Those 15 years taught me that hiding who I am to make someone else comfortable is the worst mistake I can make. Thank you for that lesson. Now please let go of me. He dropped his hand. What happens now? Now you move out of my house, find your own place, and live with the consequences of underestimating me. I adjusted my handbag. Oh, and Donovan, next time you marry someone, try actually paying attention to who they are. You might be surprised. 3 months later, I sat in the front row at Milan Fashion Week, watching Gucci's latest collection debut. The partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations. Hartley Ventures had backed 2 of Gucci's sustainability initiatives, both projected to generate massive returns while reducing the brand's environmental impact. My phone buzzed with a message from Sutton. Forbes just released their list of top female venture capitalists. You're number 7. I smiled, watching models glide down the runway in creations that celebrated beauty in all its forms. Young, mature, diverse, powerful. Another message came through, this time from a blocked number that I immediately recognized as Donovan's new phone. Saw you at Milan Fashion Week. You look happy. I'm sorry for everything. I considered responding, then decided against it. Some people didn't deserve closure. Some people deserved to wonder forever about what they'd lost. Instead, I texted Sutton back. What's our schedule look like next week? Paris meetings Monday and Tuesday, London Wednesday through Friday. You're speaking at the Financial Times Luxury Summit on Thursday. Perfect. Book my usual suite at the Ritz. I put my phone away and watched the show, surrounded by fashion industry leaders who knew my name, respected my work, and never once suggested I was too old to be there. 42 years old. Past my expiration date. I'd never felt more alive. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my penthouse office overlooking Lake Michigan, reviewing acquisition proposals for 3 emerging luxury brands. The morning sun painted the water gold, and for the first time in 16 years, I felt completely at peace. My phone rang. Sutton's name flashed across the screen. "Good morning," I answered, already pulling up my calendar. "Morning, Lennox. Quick heads up. Donovan's been trying to reach you through our main office line. He's called 6 times this week." I sighed, setting down my coffee. What does he want? He claims it's about unfinished business from the divorce. Our receptionist has been deflecting, but he's getting persistent. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Donovan received his $140,000 settlement, which he'd apparently burned through within weeks, trying to maintain the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to on my money. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd been fired from Pearson Harlow after his behavior during our separation, showing up drunk to client meetings, making scenes at professional events, generally falling apart. Part of me felt sorry for him. A very small part. "Block his calls," I said. "If he has legitimate legal concerns, he can communicate through his attorney." "Already done. Also, you have a Vogue interview at 2, dinner with the Bergdorf Goodman executives at 7, and tomorrow morning you're flying to Paris for the LVMH board meeting." "Perfect. Send me the Vogue questions so I can prepare." I hung up and returned to my proposals, but my mind kept drifting back to Donovan. 6 months ago, I would have felt guilty for his downward spiral. I would have blamed myself for not revealing my success sooner, for letting him believe a lie, for humiliating him so publicly. Now? I felt nothing but relief that I'd finally stopped shrinking myself to fit someone else's narrow perception of who I should be. My assistant knocked on the office door. "Ms. Hartley, your 11 o'clock is here. Ms. Chen from Chen Fashion Group?" "Send her in." Victoria Chen entered, a elegant woman in her late 50s who'd built one of Asia's most successful luxury conglomerates. We'd been discussing a potential partnership for months, and today was our final negotiation meeting. "Lennox," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "Thank you for making time. I know your schedule is absolutely insane these days." "For you? Always." I gestured to the sitting area. "Can I offer you coffee? Tea?" "Coffee would be wonderful." We settled into the comfortable chairs, and I poured us both coffee from the French press on the side table. Victoria studied me for a moment, a slight smile playing on her lips. "You look different," she said finally. "From the first time we met. Happier." "Divorced," I said simply. "It agrees with me." She laughed. "I read about that. Your ex-husband made quite the spectacle of himself at that Chicago charity gala, from what I heard. He had a moment of revelation about who he'd married. It didn't go well for him." "No," Victoria agreed, sipping her coffee. "I imagine not. Though I confess, I've been curious. Why did you hide your success from him? You're one of the most brilliant investors I've ever encountered. Why play down to someone else's level?" It was a question I'd been asked many times over the past 6 months. By journalists, by colleagues, by friends who couldn't understand why I'd spent 15 years pretending to be someone I wasn't. "Fear, I suppose," I said honestly. I'd been burned before by men who couldn't handle my success. With Donovan, I thought if I hid it, I'd finally get genuine love instead of resentment or gold digging. But all I got was contempt for being the person I was pretending to be. And now? Now I'm just myself. Turns out that's enough. Victoria smiled. "It's more than enough. Which brings me to why I'm here." She pulled a folder from her briefcase. "Chen Fashion Group wants to propose a joint venture with Hartley Ventures, a new fund specifically focused on emerging Asian luxury brands. We bring the market knowledge and connections. You bring the investment expertise and Western distribution networks." I opened the folder, scanning the proposal. It was ambitious. A $500 million fund, equal partnership, targeting brands that combine traditional Asian craftsmanship with modern luxury aesthetics. Exactly the kind of investment opportunity that made my pulse quicken. "This is incredible," I said, already seeing the potential. "The market timing is perfect, and these target companies are exactly the kind of undervalued opportunities I love." "So you're interested?" "More than interested. When can we start?" We spent the next 2 hours hammering out details, both of us too excited about the possibilities to stop for lunch. By the time Victoria left, we'd outlined a partnership that could reshape the Asian luxury market and potentially add another billion to both our portfolios. I was riding high when I headed down to my car for the Vogue interview, which is probably why I didn't see Donovan until it was too late. He was waiting by my car in the parking garage, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes wild and desperate. "Lennox," he said, stepping toward me. "Please, just 5 minutes." My security guard, yes, I had security now, a necessity of being publicly wealthy, immediately moved between us. "Ms. Hartley, should I call the police?" "No," I said, though every instinct screamed yes. "It's fine, but stay close." Donovan's hands shook as he reached out, then dropped them. "Thank you. I need to talk to you." "You have 3 minutes. Then I have an interview to get to." "I screwed up," he said, words tumbling out in a rush. "I know that. I was an idiot, a complete fool. But Lennox, you have to understand. I never would have treated you that way if I'd known who you really were. And that," I said quietly, "is exactly the problem." "What? No, I mean..." "You mean you would have treated me better if you'd known I was successful. Which means you treated me badly because you thought I wasn't. Do you not see how that's worse?" He blinked, clearly not understanding. "But I thought you were just a housewife. I thought you had no ambition, no drive. How was I supposed to respect that?" "By respecting me as a person regardless of my professional status. By not measuring my worth by my income or my age or my ability to impress your colleagues. That's not fair. You lied to me about who you were. I told you I was an investment consultant. I told you I worked from home. I told you I did freelance projects. None of that was a lie. You simply assumed it meant I was unsuccessful because I didn't perform my success the way you needed me to. You let me believe you were nobody. I let you reveal exactly who you were," I said, "and you revealed that you're someone who only values people based on their usefulness to you. Someone who cheats when he's bored. Someone who tears down his partner to feel bigger himself." "I can change," he said desperately. "I've been going to therapy, working on myself. I know I was terrible to you, but I can be better. We can start over, do it right this time." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no hurt, not even pity anymore. Just indifference. "Donovan, I don't want you to change for me. I want you to change for yourself. And I want you to do it far away from me. But I love you. You love the idea of being married to a billionaire. That's not the same thing. That's not true. I loved you before I knew about the money." "No," I said gently. "You love the idea of me, the version you created in your head. But you never bothered to find out who I actually was, what I actually cared about, what I actually spent my days doing. In 15 years of marriage, you never once asked about my work in any meaningful way." He opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to argue. "I have to go," I said, moving toward my car. "Please don't contact me again. If you do, I'll get a restraining order." "Lennox, wait." But I was already in the car, and my driver was pulling away, leaving Donovan standing alone in the parking garage. In my rearview mirror, I watched him grow smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. The Vogue interview took place at a trendy restaurant in River North. The journalist, a sharp woman named Patricia Romano, had clearly done her homework. "So, she said after we'd ordered. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You hid a billion-dollar fortune from your husband for 15 years. Why? I'd been asked this question dozens of times, but Patricia's directness was refreshing. Because I'd learned that my success intimidated men, I said honestly. In past relationships, being open about my career led to resentment, competition, and eventually betrayal. With Donovan, I wanted to try something different. I wanted to see if hiding my success would finally get me genuine connection. And did it? For a while I thought so, but ultimately no. Because the connection was based on a lie. Not the lie about my career, but his lie that he could love someone he perceived as ordinary. Do you regret hiding your career from him? I considered this carefully. I regret staying in a marriage where I had to hide who I was, but I don't regret the experiment itself. It taught me something valuable. The right person won't be intimidated by your success, and the wrong person won't value you without it. Patricia smiled. That's going to make a great pull quote. We talked for another hour about my career, my investment philosophy, my partnership with Gucci, and my new joint venture with Chen Fashion Group. She asked about my daily routine, my favorite investments, my advice for young women entering venture capital. Last question, Patricia said, pulling out her phone. There's been speculation about your personal life. Are you dating anyone? Not currently, I said. I'm enjoying being single, focusing on my work, and figuring out who I am without having to filter myself through someone else's expectations. But you're open to dating eventually. When I meet someone who appreciates all of me, not just the successful parts or just the vulnerable parts, but the whole complicated person, then yes. Until then, I'm quite happy on my own. 3 months later, I was in Paris for Fashion Week, sitting front row at the Chanel show. My phone buzzed with a message from Sutton. Breaking news. Pearson Harlow Consulting filed for bankruptcy. Donovan's former partners are suing him for mismanagement. I read the message twice, feeling nothing but a distant sense of inevitability. Donovan had built his entire identity on borrowed credibility, his family name, his firm's reputation, and ultimately, my hidden wealth. Without those crutches, he'd collapsed. Another message came through, this one from an unknown number. This is your fault. You destroyed my life. I blocked the number immediately, then handed my phone to my assistant. If Donovan contacts me through any channel, document it and send it to my attorney. I want a restraining order filed by end of business. Already on it, she said. The show began, and I lost myself in the beauty of the collection. Elegant suits that celebrated women's power, dresses that defied age expectations, designs that said women could be soft and strong, young and wise, successful and still searching. After the show, I had dinner with Isabelle Laurent, the CEO of a French cosmetics company I'd been courting for months. We met at a small bistro in the Marais, away from the Fashion Week crowds. I've been thinking about your proposal, Isabelle said after we'd ordered. Hartley Ventures investing in our expansion into sustainable beauty products. And? I'm interested, but I need to know. Are you someone who gets involved in the companies you invest in? Or do you just write checks and disappear? I get involved, I said. I bring strategic guidance, industry connections, and active board participation. But I don't micromanage. I invest in strong leaders and trust them to lead. Isabelle smiled. Good, because I've heard stories about venture capitalists who think their money gives them the right to override years of industry expertise. I'm not interested in overriding anyone. I'm interested in partnerships where everyone's expertise is valued. I paused. I spent 15 years having my expertise dismissed and ignored. I would never do that to someone else. I heard about your divorce, Isabel said carefully. It was quite public. It was, I agreed, and necessary. Sometimes the most important business decision you can make is firing a toxic partner, even if that partner is your spouse. She laughed. I'll drink to that. We spent the rest of dinner discussing the investment terms, our vision for the company's future, and the state of the luxury beauty market. By dessert, we'd agreed on a $50 million investment that would give Hartley Ventures a 20% stake in her company. As I walked back to my hotel that night, through Paris streets lit by ancient street lamps, I felt something I'd been building toward for months. Complete peace with my choices. Yes, I'd hidden my success from Donovan. Yes, the revelation had been public and humiliating for him. Yes, he was now facing consequences for his own poor choices. But none of that was my responsibility. My only responsibility was to myself, to stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. 1 year after the Gucci Gala, I received an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference in Chicago. The topic, building success on your own terms. I almost declined. Chicago meant risking running into Donovan, meant confronting the old life I'd left behind. But then I thought about all the women who might benefit from hearing my story. Women who were hiding their talents, diminishing their accomplishments, making themselves smaller to fit someone else's expectations. I accepted. The conference was held at the Chicago Hilton, the same hotel where Donovan and I had attended countless corporate events over the years. As I walked through the lobby in my Tom Ford suit, I remembered all the times I'd stood here playing the role of supportive wife, smiling blandly while Donovan networked and took credit for successes I'd engineered. Now I was the keynote speaker, and he was wherever he was. I'd heard he'd left Chicago, moved back to his hometown, taken a job at his father's insurance company. A massive step down from the prestigious consulting firm, but perhaps a necessary dose of humility. The ballroom was packed. Over 800 women, all there to hear about building careers and businesses. I stood backstage, reviewing my notes one last time, when the event organizer approached. Ms. Hartley, we're ready for you. Are you nervous? No, I said, surprising myself with how true it was. I'm ready. I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The spotlight was bright, but I could see faces in the audience. Young women, older women, women of every age and background, all looking at me with hope and curiosity. Good morning, I said, my voice carrying through the room. My name is Lennox Hartley, and until 18 months ago, most people knew me as Donovan Pierce's wife, a woman with no career, no ambition, no identity beyond being someone's spouse. The room was silent, attentive. What those people didn't know, what my own husband didn't know, was that I was the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar venture capital firm, that I'd built an empire while playing the role of the disappointing housewife, that every time someone told me I'd let myself go, or asked when I was going to get a real job, I was actually negotiating deals worth more than they'd earn in a lifetime. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Today, I want to talk about the cost of hiding who you are, about the price we pay when we make ourselves smaller to make others comfortable, and about what happens when you finally decide that being true to yourself is more important than being acceptable to people who will never truly value you. I spoke for 45 minutes, telling my story without shame or apology. I talked about the fear that drove me to hide my success, the pain of being dismissed by someone who claimed to love me, and the ultimate liberation of choosing myself over a comfortable lie. I'm not telling you this story so you'll feel sorry for me, I said, nearing the end of my speech. I'm telling you this so you'll understand something crucial. The right people, the right partners, the right friends, the right colleagues will celebrate your success, not resent it. They'll encourage your growth, not demand you stay small. And anyone who needs you to diminish yourself to feel comfortable with you is not someone who deserves a place in your life. The applause started before I finished my last sentence, building into a standing ovation that lasted almost 5 minutes. Women were crying, cheering, coming to their feet with an energy that told me the message had landed. During the Q&A session that followed, a young woman stood up, her voice shaking. "Ms. Hartley, I'm a software engineer, and my boyfriend keeps making jokes about how I'm too smart for my own good, too focused on my career. How do I? Leave him," I said simply. The room erupted in applause and laughter. I'm serious. Someone who feels threatened by your intelligence or success is not someone who will support you through the challenges ahead. You deserve a partner who celebrates your brilliance, not someone who tries to dim it. Another woman asked, "Do you regret the years you spent hiding your success?" "I regret staying hidden as long as I did," I said. "But those years taught me something valuable. Authenticity isn't optional. It's essential. You can't build a real life on a foundation of pretending to be someone you're not. Eventually, the whole structure collapses." After the conference ended, I was surrounded by women wanting to share their stories, ask for advice, or simply say thank you. I stayed for 2 hours, talking to as many as I could, giving out my contact information to those with serious business proposals. As I finally headed for my car, one last woman approached, older, maybe 60, elegant and composed. "Ms. Hartley," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. 20 years ago, I made myself smaller for a man who didn't deserve it. I gave up my career, my ambitions, everything that made me who I was. Your story gave me the courage to finally start over. At 62, I'm launching my first business." I felt tears prick my eyes. "That's incredible. What kind of business?" "A consulting firm for women over 50 who want to return to the workforce. I'm calling it Second Chapter Strategies." "I love it," I said, "and I'd love to hear more. Here's my card. Email me with your business plan. I'm always looking for smart investments." Her eyes widened. You'd actually look at my proposal." "Brilliant women don't stop being brilliant at 50 or 60 or 70, I said. "If your plan is solid, Hartley Ventures would be honored to consider investing." That night, back in my penthouse, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the window overlooking Lake Michigan. My phone buzzed with messages, new investment opportunities, interview requests, congratulations on the speech, and one message from an unknown number. "I saw your speech online. You were right about everything. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before. Donovan." Still trying to reach out, still thinking an apology could undo years of damage. I deleted the message without responding, blocked the number, and returned to my wine. The truth was, I'd already forgiven Donovan. Not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. He'd shown me exactly who he was, and I'd finally listened. That was enough. More importantly, I'd forgiven myself for the years I spent hiding, pretending, making myself smaller. Those years hadn't been wasted, they'd been necessary. I'd needed to learn that lesson the hard way, that true love, true partnership, true connection could only happen when you showed up as your full, authentic self. My phone rang. Sutton. Just got word, she said, excitement clear in her voice. The Chen joint venture just closed its first major acquisition. We're now the primary investor in 3 of Asia's fastest-growing luxury brands. That's fantastic. What's the projected return? Conservative estimate? 400% over 5 years. I smiled. I'll take it. Also, you have 6 new speaking requests, 12 investment proposals from today's conference alone, and Vogue wants to do a follow-up feature on your speech. They're calling it The New Face of Power. Women who refuse to hide. Accept the Vogue feature. Have my team review the investment proposals. I want to prioritize businesses founded by women over 40. And for the speaking requests, I'll do them if they're focused on women's entrepreneurship or challenging age discrimination in business. Understood. And Lennox, that speech today was incredible. You're changing lives. After we hung up, I walked to my home office, the real one, with no pretense, no hidden panels, no secrets. On the wall hung a framed photo from the Gucci gala, me in my red gown, confident and radiant and fully myself. Next to it was the Forbes cover from 3 months ago, the billionaire who hid in plain sight. And beside that, a handwritten note from Victoria Chen. Thank you for showing us all what it looks like to choose yourself. The world is better when women take up space. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began reviewing proposals for Hartley Ventures' next investment. Somewhere out there, Donovan was probably still trying to understand how his boring, aging, irrelevant wife had actually been one of the most successful investors in the luxury market. But his understanding, his acceptance, his approval, none of it mattered anymore. I'd spent 42 years learning to be myself, 15 years hiding that self, and the last year and a half finally living as the person I'd always been meant to be. Lennox Hartley, venture capitalist, Gucci partner, woman who refused to be diminished. At 44, I wasn't past my expiration date. I was just getting started. Epilogue. 2 years later. The Harvard Business School auditorium was packed with MBA students eager to hear about venture capital, luxury markets, and building billion-dollar portfolios. But halfway through my lecture, a hand shot up. "Ms. Hartley," a young woman called out. "Your story about hiding your success from your husband, do you ever regret how publicly you revealed the truth? Some people say you humiliated him unnecessarily." I smiled, recognizing the question for what it was. Another version of, shouldn't you have been nicer? Shouldn't you have protected his feelings? Shouldn't you have made your liberation more comfortable for him? "Here's what I've learned," I said. "Women are always asked to manage men's emotions, even, especially, when those men have spent years managing to ignore ours." I didn't humiliate Donovan. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his choices. The humiliation he felt came from realizing that the woman he'd been dismissing as worthless was actually extraordinary. "That's not my problem to solve." The auditorium erupted in applause. But more importantly, I continued, I stopped asking myself whether I was being too much, too successful, too ambitious, too visible. Because too much is what people say when you refuse to stay small for their comfort. And I'm done being small. After the lecture, as I packed up my materials, I checked my phone. A message from Sutton. Another record quarter. Portfolio value just crossed $2.8 billion. And below that, a message from the woman I'd been dating for 6 months. A brilliant architect named Grace who knew exactly who I was, celebrated every success, and never once suggested I tone anything down. Dinner tonight? I want to hear all about Harvard, and maybe discuss moving in together. Too fast? Love you. G. I smiled, typing back, not too fast. Perfect timing. Love you too. At 46 years old, I was exactly where I needed to be. Fully myself, unapologetically successful, and finally free. Donovan had called me too old, past my expiration date. A disappointment. He'd been wrong about all of it. And now, standing in front of the next generation of business leaders, I got to tell them the truth. You're never too old, too ambitious, too much. You're exactly enough. The only question is whether you're brave enough to believe it. I was, and I would never make myself small again. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.